So we have done it. 10,000 subscribers, pretty substantial milestone for me, I ain't gonna lie. It's one of these milestones that hits the hardest because the way YouTube abbreviates your subscriber count changes, and now I guess I'm not a small content creator anymore, although the sap inflation from botted shorts channels is still a thing, so I might as well still be tiny. But anyways, since we've reached that milestone, I'm certain that some of you are aware that this means we are doing a Q&A or question and answer for those who don't know this abbreviation somehow. Since I've asked you in my recent community post and on my Discord to post some questions for me to answer, we're gonna answer some of them right now, so sit back and enjoy. Starting it off with the first batch of questions from my Discord server. Community post ones will be later. First question coming from Kantaro, which reads: why did you decide to become a content creator and was it worth it? Well, for the part of question which asks why I've done it, we'd have to travel back all the way to 2015. That was the year when 7-year-old me got that spark for content creation, that spirit, you know. The YouTubers who've inspired me for the most part were Polish Minecraft and, surprise surprise, something completely unrelated to my channel, Plants vs Zombies YouTubers. These were also the first two games that I've ever recorded, with an honestly surprisingly decent quality of 720p, which for 2015 standards wasn't all that bad if you were such a low-end channel. This channel, with at the time completely different name, went on to produce a bajillion styles of content, some of which got me and my friends who are sometimes involved in my vids clashing with school principals. Yes, it was pretty wild. The content ranged from gameplays through vlogs, through challenges, all that. I mean, it's been almost a decade at this point, and this channel is pretty historical, right? Trying to name everything it's been dipped in would take eons, basically. As for how Handif was created, yeah, the story is a lot shorter. Nonetheless, it's still remotely interesting. Basically, one day in 2022, I was sick. Nothing major, just your average autumn sickness struggles, when suddenly, out of complete blue, right? I mean, I was doing literally nothing. An idea sparked to my head to type in how to blow up on YouTube. Typing in that one cliche-ass phrase triggered a chain of events that led me to creating my first batch of Monster Hunter shorts in just 2 days. Then I created more and people started coming in, more, you know the thing. And soon it became a part of my routine, somewhat of a established habit, and I continued with it for 2.5 years, and it's still counting. Maybe it'll be 3, maybe I'll even pull it to 4, 5, maybe I'll live to the time where it'll be a decade, but yeah, time will tell, I guess. It was worth it, right? For one, it was worth it. Sometimes I feel like YouTube algorithm is just screwing me over, limiting my content reach. But such pitiful moments like this are obviously easily explained, although I sometimes just don't want to admit it, but I do get lazy sometimes and skip an upload or two, and algorithm just derails everything. But moments like this generally pale in comparison to what this channel has contributed to my personal growth in many areas, not just one area, right? So yeah, it's a pretty nice hobby to have. Next question is from Stylen is Style, and it reads: how tall are you? Well, that is a funny question to answer, because each time I've been measured, it's always produced varying results. But generally, what is certain is that I'm slightly above average for the standards of my country, measuring at about 180-182 centimeters, which to imperial units translates as roughly just above 6 feet. So yeah, it's not astronomically tall, but I find it rather optimal, even though most of the mofus in my school are inches taller, which makes me question their genetic lack, but whatever. Now we have ourselves the question from Omni himself, the moderation of my channel, the Batman, the guy who works in the shadows to fight any bit of misinformation or leak promotion in my comment sections, and this glorious question reads: when are you gonna join voice chat, honey? It obviously had to be honey. Yeah, he couldn't have called me anything else. He wouldn't have been himself if he did. But to answer this, it will happen, presumably in this timeline, so yeah. Next question from Victoraptor, alright, or Vistoraptor, I don't know. How did you discover Monster Hunter? Basically, it was an accident. There is not much magical backstory on that, like some other people have with their first encounters with Monster Hunter. Just one day I was looking for games to play on PSP emulator and stumbled across Monster Hunter Freedom Unites. It was like 2019. And at the time as well, I was like 11 or so. I remember being kinda overwhelmed because it was my first proper action RPG, but I've gotten comfy with it quite quickly, despite obviously horrendously clunky controls which have not gotten better in terms of overall feel, even after all these years have passed. What are your thoughts on Hammer? Asks Lucent Gale, Fulgur, and Janath. Agenda. You're asking someone who will answer this question in a certainly not at all biased way, because I've been mining this weapon basically since the beginning to cut the overly glorifying slack that I'd like to spit out over here. Let's just say that I like this weapon a lot simply for how straightforward and effective it is. Anyone can pick it up without any real issues. If there are issues, they are mostly minor that will pass rather quickly. And having the ability to consistently stun monsters is incredibly valuable because it allows for getting in a lot of no-risk damage, which is something you can never really go wrong with. What is your least favorite monster and why? Asks Dexin Elliot Winters. It is worthy of note, right, that I don't quite dislike any monster whatsoever. I think all of them have redeeming qualities in at least some area. So the monsters I don't like tend to usually be just monsters that I forget about most of the time. So a fair chunk of subspecies, that's for one. Mostly because they just end up being pretty obscure to me and kinda unnecessary too, since oftentimes they don't change that much in terms of actual fight. And secondly, monsters that are extremely blunt by default. Think Lao Shenlong. It has absolutely nothing that makes its appearance in any game worth your time. The fight is a slog. Gear is okay-ish, I guess, but it doesn't really justify you going for this thing because it's very boring and long to fight. And it's just overall pretty mediocre monster, not the one that I strictly dislike because, as I said, I don't dislike anything. But definitely it's not the kind of monster I'm particularly hyped about fighting. Mr. Greg has a question of face reveal when, and that's probably not happening, or has already happened. I am slow. Well, my friend, you are not slow at all, because you guessed it, it has not happened yet. It's in fact planned to be a 100k sub special, which is an astronomically distant milestone that I'll probably never hit. But if I will, this might go down in history books. Mad Scientist asks, what are your thoughts on platypus being older than a duck? So a duck technically has a platypus bill. Wait, hold on, are you serious? Okay, so apparently platypus is older as a distinct lineage by a significant margin. Firstly, I'm glad you shared this very random information with me, because the odds of me getting to know this fact without proper influence would be minimal. Secondly, it's just some sort of look-based bias. I think that duck is a lot more popular and recognizable than platypus, and it's therefore making it more symbolic, I don't know. Kantaro once again, here with a question of favorite piece of media, movie, TV show, anime, you name it. I honestly gotta go with shonen. This is by far my go-to for fiction right now. No matter what series it is, could be Dragon Ball, could be JJK, could be even Solo Leveling, even though I'm not really too deep into it. This genre of anime has a very surface level writing for the most part, which makes it very easy to get into, on the condition that you like a crap ton of violence, because there is a lot. This is basically its bread and butter. Now the question from Captain Seawolf, reading, if you had a domain expansion, ooh, that's a fancy one, what will be its name and what will it look like? Well, since my PFP profile picture consists of Toji and Violet Mizetsune, I suspect a domain which places the target in some airy lavender meadow sorta thing with flames all over in a form of like a ring. In that domain, besides obvious flames, there would also be bubbles to further reference Violet Mizetsune. If you pop the right bubble and sufficient amount of them, you'll be freed from the domain. But if you pop the wrong one, ring of fire around you will start shrinking. To make it all more airy, it won't be visible until you pop the bubble. So once you pop it, you'll start seeing the flames consume everything over the horizon. Not bit by bit, continuously. Once you pop the wrong thing, you're pretty much doomed to be consumed by flames unless you can somehow out-hacks it, but it's not likely. To add Toji aspect onto this flame bypasses all sorts of hacks. Well, the subpar hacks, the inferior hacks, the superior ones will still be able to bypass it, just like Inverted Spear of Heaven does. Once you touch it, you'll be cleansed of everything. Even if you manage to bypass this domain, whichever abilities you had will be handicapped in one way or another pretty much indefinitely, even if you regain some of them. And yeah, the name of this domain is something that I can't come up with myself, so I'll have to ask the brilliant AI to come up with it for me. And here is what it cooked up. Takashi, Muzan's child, wonders if I have played Dragon's Dogma or anything like it, and if so, what are my thoughts? I have in fact never played Dragon's Dogma myself, but I have played a game similar to it that comes from the same publisher, that obviously being Monster Hunter. I don't think there is much elaboration needed on why this series is great, because I think everyone knows why. The concept is simple, designs are absolute peak for the most part, and it has banger music, interesting ecology, I mean, you know the thing. That does it for the Discord portion of questions. Now on to YouTube ones, starting with maybe the earliest ones this time. Starting with question from T-Lex, who asks whether I'll make tutorials on my very cool texts. I suspect you mean the text I use for my 1v1 edits, because any other text I use is just a basic CapCut template. Wait, actually, it's not basic because you need Pro for this, but at this point you need Pro for everything in CapCut, so whatever. Anyways, that's actually pretty simple. As some of you may know, the ones who are into the editing sort of stuff, for most of my effects I use a light motion. So for my text, for the bar, the most effect intensive part of it all, I use primarily 5 effects: turbulent displays, circular ripple, wave warp, electrical edges, and glow. Essentially what I do is create a very thin and wide rectangle. Doesn't really have to be white, the background can be erased anyways, it doesn't really matter. And then add some electrical edges with negative distance and a crap ton of distortion to create the bar. Keyframe the evolution so it gets some movement, add some additional glow for visuals, and from that point on I'm pretty much done with the base. You can then add some additional fancy distortion through wave warps and additional circular ripples, or create more layers to stack different effects and different objects to create something unique. Now I don't know whether this is an actual question for this Q&A, probably, I mean, it is under this post, so it might as well be. It is from Axion, I don't know whether I pronounced it correctly or not, and it reads, "Where did you get that photo of me?" Well, first I gotta say that I admire the fact that this is you in that picture. I'm very honored to have met the shredded CBAM incarnation of Jan Kutku here in my comments, but as for where I got that photo, it's from Jan Kutku Day Photo Gallery. If you don't know, for some only stupid reason, Japan has this unofficial media holiday called the Jan Kutku Day, which apparently has to do with the odd coincidental naming of the date and the Kutku, and then they somehow sound similarly, so they decided that this pun is somehow worthy of a completely separate day, which honestly is a W. This is just cracked. Anyways, moving on. Now we got a pretty interesting question from a person named Lawless984, and they ask about the difference between Neopterans and Temnosirians. When it comes to the difference between the two, we could obviously theorize and give vague answers like the one class looks like spiders and Neopterans look like different insect species, and that would honestly be enough, because the only real distinction between the two classes is that the Temnosirians have characteristics of arachnoids, meaning mainly the ability to produce silk, because the 8-limb quote-unquote sub-requirement is not always met. So to answer this question a bit more clearly, one class is akin to spiders, whereas the other one is just a generalized class for insect-like monsters. Dylan or Dylan C, I don't know, asks, what's your thoughts on Wild's difficulty dilemma or Monster Hunter difficulty in general? This is gonna be a pretty hot take, but personally I don't think any Monster Hunter game is particularly easier than previous one. First is obviously the point of experience, especially if you started with old world games known for their absolutely brutally raw mechanics. The learning curve is gonna be less and less steep with each new title released, both due to mechanics being watered down for the sake of mainstream appeal and you just getting better at the game. I think Monster Hunter is not getting any easier on the surface level, it's just more approachable. It's easier to get someone into Monster Hunter by getting them to play Wilds or Rise than it is to get them into the same franchise by playing Monster Hunter Freedom Unite. Each game, I think, is challenging in its own unique fashion though. What is your guess for future title updates in Monster Hunter Wilds? Question from Cheeseburger1222. Well, unfortunately, I have fallen victim to the leaks. So it's not really the type of question I'd like to answer, not as long as the base is still rolling out at least. Maybe if we were to get a Wilds expansion a few months from now, it would be a better question, but for now let's just move on. Power Balance de Kitsune. Holy crap, that's one heck of a nickname over here. What is your favorite monster from these classifications? Bird Wyvern. I think it's a tie between Great Macao and Great Izuchi, excluding the memes, right? Because obviously then it would be Great Jaggi. Both of them have very cool vibe to them and are very fun to fight, though I might say that Great Macao marginally edges it out thanks to vibrant visuals and an absolute banger of a team. Holy crap. Leviathan is self-explanatory, I hope. Flying Wyvern, I have a very hard time picking one, but it'll probably be Giginox. This is the proper incarnation of Kezu. I don't care what anyone says. It has a very similar design premise, being a blind cave dweller, but instead of being low-key kinda disgusting in all aspects, it genuinely looks and kinda even feels creepy. Brute Wyvern used to be Paroth not too long ago, but now that Wilds is out, Rompopolo has overtaken this spot for me. This thing's aesthetic and fight is just something else in comparison to everything in this class. The moment I saw it, I knew it's gonna end up as one of my favorite monsters, and well, it did. Fang Beast would be an easy choice, if not for the existence of a video game named Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak, because it dropped so many cool Fang Beasts that it's extremely hard to pick the best one of the bunch. We have Bishaten, a funny fruit monkey, Gosharag, the Yeti incarnation of Katana Man, and Garangolm, fancy Frankenstein elemental golem. It's really hard for me to decide, but my pick is ultimately gonna be Gosharag, just for how menacing this guy is portrayed. I mean, he's just extremely badass, and the fight is really fun too. Question: would you recommend anyone to take on editing like you, or people do what they want to enjoy? From Tozesser. I don't quite understand the nature of this question. Are you asking whether someone should just give up their current hobby in favor of editing because it's superior in any way? Because if that's the case, then obviously I don't want that. Each person is free to have their own interests and goals and whatnot. However, if you're asking whether it's worth it to pick up editing alongside another hobby, I'd say it's a pretty good one. If you're a creative person who's really into a particular thing, doesn't even have to be fiction, you can do edits on anything at this point. I mean, I've seen freaking maths edits being done, so it's really just your imagination at this point. It can be really rewarding to create unique flashy stuff with it, especially when other people notice it. But don't expect any financial gain from it, unless you do edits on some uncopyrighted stuff, because then you can flow some money into it. Otherwise it's just kinda indirect monetization like PayHip or something. Okay, that one I've seen coming from miles away. What is your favorite snack excluding chocolate? For once I have resisted. 3 dots, and chocolate. And obvious classic. If this presumably human specimen called Kenny Loves Chocolate, who's been on my channel for like 2 whole years at this point and hasn't posted a single comment without remotely mentioning chocolate, has asked anything but this very question, I would have assumed that his account got stolen. But here we are, and for the answer, considering that you've excluded chocolate, you immediately outed my go-to pre-workout snack, that being protein bars. While not strictly chocolate, they mostly do contain chocolate in at least some quantity, and my favorite ones pretty much always do in a significant quantity. But there's another thing that I'm a huge fan of, and that is cashews. I don't know, I just got my hands on one pack in the past, and these nut imposters become an instant love of mine. I like having a bowl of them besides me while I'm doing some mentally taxing tasks, cause they really help with fueling my brain. Such a stupidly long nickname, I won't even bother reading it. Anyways, the question is, who wins, Doomslayer, Eternal or White Fatalis? Look, as much as I respect the Grandpa Dragon and would really like for it to win, Doomslayer just outscales the entire Monster Hunter verse massively in all aspects, unless we take composite into account, which actually would rival him quite well. This matchup is a one-sided corpse stomp in Doomguy's favor, so yeah. What is the best Monster Hunter for beginners? That question is a deceptively tricky one to answer because it depends on what you want your introduction to feel like. If you want to get into the franchise with a more approachable mechanics and a rather streamlined experience, Gen 5 onwards is gonna be the obvious answer. If you want to first experience old world Monster Hunter with the most quality of life, go Geo or For You. I feel like these two are kinda interchangeable, but Geo obviously has more content, so if you want content and QoL, go for Geo. If you want to experience underwater combat, you know the answer, and if you want to feel like those mythical so-called Monster Hunter veterans and have all the bragging rights in the world, go Monster Hunter Freedom Unite. Only one important question: which monster do you hate when fighting it? Very important question, and I do have the answer for you. Devil Joe is a monster that I'm overall indifferent towards design-wise. It has a meme factor to it, looking like a pickle, so that's some 3 points, but aside from that, nothing else. Fighting it in every single one of its iteration absolutely sucks. I could go on a whole rant about this absolutely horrid fight design, but what absolutely nails to the core each point I would make is the video by Froggy Flow. Minus Gen 5, but it would mostly just be copy and paste there. I am not affiliated with the creator in any way, but I had to give a shout out to this absolute masterpiece for the sake of answering this question. Yeah, sure, hit me up on Discord if you want, I'm open. OC Rips. I have 3 questions. What is your name? What is your quest? What is the average airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow? Okay, this is some reference I'm not getting, but we'll get to it. First answer, my name is Michael. Second answer, I actually have no idea. I would say getting late somehow in the future sometime, but physically impossible things can't really be considered quests, can they? And for the third answer, what the actual fight? Yeah, there is your answer. So there is that. I've tried answering as many questions as possible to keep this video reasonable in terms of length, although it did turn out to be extremely long either way. Hopefully I gave you some interesting enough answers. Once again, thank you so much for 10,000 subs. That milestone will hopefully not be the last one I ever hit, but oh well. I hope you all have an amazing day regardless of that. Take care and peace out.